Good afternoon, and thank you for joining the closing session of the ADB's Gender Forum, The Power to Transform Gender Equality in Asia and the Pacific. Now, in the last 4 days, we all had a chance to listen to our inspiring speakers, participate in discussions, and benefit from the discussions and the practical tools shared by our partners and in the Knowledge Lab sessions. My name is Jamela Alendogan. So let's start. The issues related to gendered social norms, gender-based violence, and how these affect women and girls' lives have been discussed quite extensively in the last days, and especially today on International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. Today, we have Reem Al-Salem, the UN Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women, to deliver a closing remarks with a pre-recorded message. Let's watch this.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank the Asian Development Bank for inviting me to address you in the closing session of your Gender Forum. I wish to express my deep appreciation of the fact that ADB is hosting such a forum. Advancing gender equality is an issue for all actors, not only states, and we all need to play our part from where we sit in order to be able to make a difference in the lives of millions of women and girls and to put an end to violence against them. This has become more challenging in recent years. The epidemic of violence against women is being compounded by COVID-19 epidemic. Add to that the collective threat that we are all facing due to climate change, environmental degradation that is also affecting your region. International financial institutions are important partners in the fight to end violence against women and girls. They must recognize the impact of their lending programs, surveillance, and technical assistance on gender equality and work to eliminate inequalities for women and girls. This is especially more so the case given that ADB is more than just a financial institution. It is a development partner. As you may appreciate, ending violence against women is not only a human rights issue, it is also a development issue. It is also a prosperity issue. In that sense, it is not a coincidence that through SDG 4 and SDG 5 of the 2030 Agenda, states committed to achieving gender equality and empowerment, as well as ending all forms of violence against women. Collectively, we have learned important lessons about how to end violence against women. 2 lessons are particularly worth mentioning. The first is the importance of investing in prevention. Prevention cannot be an afterthought, but it needs to be placed at the center of the bank's intervention. The other issue is that violence women experience based on gender intersects with oppression and discrimination that is based on other grounds, such as class, ethnicity, disability, sexuality, race, etc. You are in touch with stakeholders that can address these causes and consequences of violence, and you work very closely with them. And I see from the agenda of the forum and the wide variety of different stakeholders you have invited, a recognition of this intersectionality, as well as a recognition of the multiplicity and interrelatedness of causes and consequences. Multilateral development banks like yours are in a unique position to make advances using both these approaches and lessons to end violence against women, as you work with different international, national, and regional stakeholders, both state and non-state, but in particularly line ministries and relevant institutions that have a mandate on the issue. You can also continue to insist on improving the quality of data, since up-to-date disaggregated data on violence against women and girls is necessary, particularly when it comes to describing relations between perpetrators of violence and victims. Data on several groups that are particularly vulnerable and invisible remain difficult, such as women that are in conditions of statelessness, indigenous, with diverse sexual orientation and gender identities, migrants, etc. I'm confident that many of the issues have been addressed in your forum and that you will be given due consideration to the issues I mentioned in the follow-up on your meeting's recommendation. Thank you very much.
We also talked a lot about how we can support women and girls to achieve their full potential. If you joined the opening session, you've seen the ADB Forum video inspiring us to think and act on creating the future where every girl has no limits and can achieve anything. And with this, I am thrilled to invite our next speaker of today's closing session, Ms. Jayanthi Kuru Utumpala.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me here today. It's really such an honor and a privilege for me to share a few words with all of you here today at the ADB Gender Forum. My topic for today is Tell Girls They Can Climb Mountains. Now, some of you may be wondering, what does Everest have to do with gender equality? A lot in my case, that's quite a lot there. There is a lot to do with climbing Everest and gender equality, in my experience, because in 2016, 5 years ago, something magical happened, for me at least. Two of the things that I have been most passionate about came together at the summit on the top of the world, on the summit of Mount Everest, when I became the first Sri Lankan person and the first Sri Lankan woman to summit Mount Everest. So after returning Sri Lanka, I was actually informed by a journalist that my journey to the top of Everest actually made Sri Lanka the fourth country in the world, only the fourth country in the world, where a woman had summited Mount Everest before a man. So this piece of data, I had no idea about this, of course, but what was interesting was that overall, globally, the numbers show that there are about 5,000 people who have climbed Everest. And I was the 420th woman to climb Everest. But in terms of who has access and opportunities to engage in mountaineering and rock climbing and adventure sports, Sri Lanka became the fourth country in the world where a woman climbed Everest before a man. So for me, that only goes to show that we need to create more opportunities, more equal opportunities for women and girls so that they can also reach their full potential. In my experience, I was very fortunate that I had these opportunities growing up in Colombo in a middle-class family. I was actually encouraged to climb trees, to take up adventure sports, to do rock climbing. The only the only advice I was given by my parents was to do something correctly. So I was always taught to learn. In fact, my parents taught us how to climb trees. So instead of saying don't climb because you will fall, more like, okay, here's how to climb safely. So you can climb up and come down safe. And that was critical. I had those opportunities. So I want to quickly share a few examples where, drawing from the journey of climbing Mount Everest, a few gendered examples. So on the one hand, when I was climbing Everest, I had to also wear a mountaineering suit, which actually was 2 sizes too big for me. I'll share a quick image here that you can see. Hopefully you can see my screen. So to climb Everest, you need an 8,000 meter mountaineering suit, which you can see in the photograph in front of you. It's a blue and white suit, a blue and yellow suit. In order to stay alive, it's an 8,000 meter down suit. And it's essential that you have the correct equipment in order to come down this mountain alive and in one piece, not in multiple pieces. So the suit is critical, and likewise, the boots are also a critical part of your gear. In fact, these are the 2 most important and the most expensive pieces of gear that one needs. But in my case, I could not find a suit that actually fitted me. So I am a women's extra small size person. And the only suit that was available in the global market, I looked in the US markets, in the Australian markets, in Europe, everywhere. and the only sizes that are available was a men's extra small. Now, I'm a women's extra small, so even a men's extra small was far too big for me, right? You can see the sleeves, I had to keep pulling it up. It was very uncomfortable. Even my boots, again, in the US market, I bought it in New York. They don't manufacture boots for women's sizes. So I had to wear boots that were 2 sizes too big for me. And they kept coming off, right? It's a 2-month journey. So I had to keep putting foam inside my boot, which slowed me down, which increased the danger. So it's not ideal. But I'm sharing this to explain that the playing field hasn't been equal. It's still not equal. And that is why we need to ensure that women and girls have equal access to opportunities. Yes, they do have equal rights, but that's not enough. We need to create that enabling environment in order for women and girls to access those equal rights. So we need those opportunities, and the access is very critical. Another example was this one, where this is a post actually by a youth group here in Sri Lanka. They're called the hashtag generation. There were many memes when I got back to Sri Lanka after climbing Everest. And this was my favorite because it really hit the nail on the head. What it basically says here is, it says in Sinhalese, but I'll translate it in English. It says, in a country where boys are often told, don't behave like a girl, don't cry like a girl, we are proud that the first Sri Lankan to summit Mount Everest is a woman. Now, one more example I would like to quickly share is that when I came back from climbing Everest, since then I have been invited to share this journey of climbing this big mountain and all the life lessons that I have learned. And I was sharing this story in a rural school in the northwestern province in Sri Lanka. And after I shared the entire story and mentioned the challenges and the difficulties, and there were also 2 of us climbing, my climbing partner, who's a guy, and I. Unfortunately, though, he had to turn back very close to the summit because of some malfunction in his oxygen cylinder. We don't know what happened. And we were also not together, so I didn't even know this had happened to him. But when we finished this sharing the story, 5 little girls came up to me. They were around the age of 12 to 14 years old. And they told me, they said, Miss, we're so glad that you became the first Sri Lankan to climb Mount Everest. And I asked them why. I said, why do you say that? And they said, because you have shown us that girls can also come first. And I said, well, girls can come first. Boys can come first. In fact, anyone can come first. I said, your gender does not matter. If you work hard and train hard, anyone can come first. But then those girls told me, no, miss, our sports teacher, who's this guy standing over there, he tells us that boys are always first and girls are second. Now, imagine what that does to an adolescent young girl. These are the gender stereotypes that we need to challenge. We need to question these, right? When we talk about gender equality, this is unacceptable. But we know that these stereotypes still exist in pretty much all around us. And so for me, that's something that I have been trying to share everywhere I go, basically to say that we have to challenge these stereotypes, because the stereotypes only prevent us from being the best we can be. If all girls and women and everyone, trans people, everyone, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity or religion or racial background or ethnicity, if we all have equal rights and also equal access to opportunities, we can all reach our full potential. So for me, the message here is, how do we create that enabling environment for each other? And how do we ensure that everyone is able to achieve their full potential? On that note, I will stop, but thank you once again, and thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you so much, Jayanti. That is absolutely inspiring. Imagine climbing Mount Everest and being the first woman from your country to do it. You spoke about how not just the girls can climb mountain, that it is important that there will be created equal opportunities to reach their full potential. You also talked about how it was growing up in Colombo, where you were encouraged by your own parents to take up sports and to learn how to do them the right way. So, having a playing even equal field is not enough. Equal rights is not enough. You also spoke about having equal access to opportunities. So again, Jayanti, I want to say thank you so much for being an inspiration to so many girls across the globe. Thank you so much. Now, I would like to invite our next speaker to deliver closing remarks, Mr. Bambang Susantono, the Vice President for Knowledge Management and Sustainable Development at Asian Development Bank. Hello, sir.
Thank you so much, Shamila. Distinguished guests, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, a very good day from Manila, the Philippines. It is my pleasure to join all of you at the closings of ADB First ADB Gender Forum. Without a doubt, this forum has been an inspiring 4-day knowledge event. It was an excellent opportunity for such a diverse group of people to share their experiences and lessons learned. We had 4 days of important dialogue on 4 interrelated themes. It allowed us to focus on and dig deeper into highly relevant and critical areas for advancing gender equality and women's empowerment across Asia and the Pacific. We have also been able to examine emerging challenges, explore new frontiers for gender equality, and see how we can better support Sustainable Development Goal 5 on gender. 23 years ago, in 1998, our first policy on gender and development was approved. To this date, it remains relevant. The policy formally recognized ADB's gender mainstreaming approach. In 2012, we issued the guidelines for gender mainstreaming categories of ADB projects. Updated in 2021, it defined our gender categorization system to measure, count, and report on gender equality issues in our projects. As you know, Strategy 2030 highlights accelerating progress in gender equity as one of the 7 operational priorities. We established new targets for gender mainstreaming with at least 75% of our committed projects to be gender inclusive by 2030. While we have come a long way since 1998, our gender agenda remains unfinished. We are grateful to you, our speakers, moderators, and participants, for challenging us to do better and be more innovative. We must continue to strive for a region where girls and women have every opportunity to lead life free from discriminations and violence. The pandemic reminds us that progress on gender equality cannot be taken for granted. Women are more vulnerable to pandemic-related impact because of existing gender inequality. These effects are pronounced in Asia and the Pacific region due to pre-existing cultural biases on gender and various social norms that make women and girls particularly vulnerable. The timing of this forum was critical. We are collectively and urgently tackling both the pandemic recovery and the climate crisis. We must build forward better for a more gender equal and resilient world. We ran 27 different sessions with more than 1,900 registered participants. It was a busy yet invigorating week. We were also very happy to see such high-level participations from our members, development partners, and ADB staff. Because of this, we had the chance to demonstrate how to apply and to implement new practices on gender-related policy and programmatic interventions. We heard many inspirational voices and stories in the process, and we know it will take all of us working together to make gender equality a reality across our region. So let me briefly take you through some highlights of the Gender Forum. On day 1, we discussed how to make economies work for women. The session on that day raised important questions on the potential long-term impact of COVID-19 on the workforce. We learned that countries need to prepare and to support women for the work of the future while leveraging automation and digitalization and eliminating gender gaps in digital and financial inclusion. A key recommendation was to continue to invest in the care economy, address social and gender norms, and support women's access to modern knowledge and skills so they can be an active part of the changing economy. We need also to look at the new emerging sectors as essential job generators for women. Day 2 discussed quality infrastructure for gender equality. The central questions to tackle was, can future cities become gender responsive by considering the needs of women and girls as part of the city planning and design process? I'm sure you all have walked away with many thoughts after the panelists discussed crucial aspects of access, participation, livability, mobility, security, and urban governance while designing city infrastructure. What we learned from this discussion on day 2 was how important it is to keep investing in gender-sensitive infrastructure planning and inclusive access to services. There must be a gender-based analysis of urban space and inclusive urban design through systematic data generation and gender-focused decision-making. In short, we want to ensure women and girls are active participants in city planning and design. Day 3 focused on how climate action and a just transition can help gender transformative change, specifically how to create opportunities for empowering women and increasing their role in society during the just transition process. We were challenged to think differently about decent work and how the shift to green jobs can create a new paradigm for gender equality and economic empowerment. If climate finance can build a holistic ecosystem of climate, business, and inclusion, then women will benefit. In the good practice sessions, panelists discussed the essential role gender plays in climate change mitigation and adaptations, including many examples of how women lead as agents for change. With the conclusion of COP26 fresh in our mind, the key takeaway from the day 3 session is very timely. We must continue bolstering women-led climate action and ensure that climate finance strengthens women's resilience to climate change. I hope you have all joined today's commemoration of the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women to conclude the forum. By bringing out the prevalence and impact of gender-based violence and sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment in development projects, today's session raised an important question. What must we, as a development bank, do to tackle gender-based and sexual violence in our work? How can we support our members address this endemic problem? Today's session also reminded us why the informal economy should be at the center of our conversations about reducing poverty, addressing gender inequalities, and supporting women's empowerment. To further enhance the gender equality agenda, gender-responsive governance should be central in our policy dialogues, knowledge work, and investment programs. We are grateful to our development partners who offer these 4 days hosted 16 sessions of Knowledge Lab with more than 40 speakers. Discussions range from STEM educations, storytelling through data, water and sanitation, to supporting women's energy entrepreneurships and addressing gender-based violence. I want to sincerely thank our colleagues from a long list of contributors. I also want to thank all our distinguished speakers, panelists, and Knowledge Lab partners for making this gender forum such a huge success. Distinguished guests, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, this first ADB Gender Forum has left us with many rich ideas and a pathway to follow to accelerate progress on gender and women's empowerment. This is critical for meeting our region's goal of inclusive and sustainable development. We also prioritize the creation, development, and sharing of gender-related knowledge with our development partners. We must also continually renew our efforts to intentionally address the persistent gender norms that continue to limit girls' and women's potential, opportunity, and agency. At the same time, we must continue our efforts to collect, analyze, disseminate, and use sex disaggregated data to inform gender-responsive evidence-based development policy. Finally, we must ensure that empowering women and girls remains at the forefront of our development agenda. In closing, I want again to underscore our unwavering commitment at ADB to work with our development partners to use well-tested approaches and innovative ideas for gender equality. We must ensure that women and girls have equal participations, representations, and leadership roles as we seek more sustainable, gender-responsive, and climate-resilient development. This we owe to you, and to the people of our regions. Thank you very much again, and have a good day. Back to you, Jamila.
Thank you very much, VP, for the great summary of these inspiring 4 days of discussion. And of course, for summarizing the highlights of this forum and the key takeaways. Thank you also for reminding us that if we want to build a sustainable development, we need to ensure that women and girls have equal participation, representation, and leadership roles. Picking on this, I think it's a good time to hear voices of ADB staff on why gender agenda is so important in their work. Let's watch this.
I support gender equality because it is so critical to recognize and value the role played by each and every person, regardless of who they are or what they do. That is the premise of human dignity. The pandemic has brought out the best as well as the worst in our societies, for example, through the rise in violence against women. We at the ADB should redouble our efforts to boost gender equality in everything that we do. There should be no area or no effort that is left unexplored.
I support gender equality because it is about basic human respect. At the end of the horizon, we see the world free of fear. The fear of not being able to continue education, the fear of not being raped, the fear of not getting a job or losing a job, fear of being marginalized because of your sex or gender.
Achieving gender equality is critically important to all of us so that we can achieve the most desirable social and economic outcomes. The ADB Philippines Country Partnership Strategy mainstreams gender equality in all our programs and projects. And this year, we expect to see over 85% of our projects and programs achieve effective gender mainstreaming.
I support gender equality because I want to live in a world that's built and enjoyed by both men and women. When women receive a quality education, when they can access health care regardless of where they live, then they're better prepared to participate in the workforce. They're going to be more productive, and they're going to pass on the benefits to the rest of their family. We see the challenges firsthand here in Georgia, where women are active in some parts of the labor force, but underrepresented in others. There's a 19% gap between men and women's participation here. That's why we're financing vocational training that reaches women, and why we've targeted women-owned businesses as part of ADB's non-sovereign support for commercial banks. Look, in a world where complexity is the norm and innovation's a requirement for success, we can't afford not to support gender equality across all aspects of our work.
To advance gender equality, ADB should always look for ways to change gender stereotypes at the youngest age possible. Kids need to grow up thinking that there's nothing that they can't do, whatever their gender. Last week, I visited a school that ADB rebuilt after an earthquake. It's a fantastic school, but one of the things that struck me was there were separate crafts rooms for girls and boys, because girls make pretty colored things and boys do wood and metal work. But these kind of stereotypes become bigger norms about the role of men and women in society and lead to the care burden that has particularly affected women during the pandemic. But last week, I also visited a Centre for Creative Technologies where boys and girls aged 12 to 18 were side by side, learning everything from programming to music to robotics, which is really inspiring and I can see will change the norms that hold women back from STEM professions. So I think we should always look for the softer infrastructure opportunities for change in everything that we do, and no matter how small they seem.
To advance gender equality, ADB should stress that gender equality is critical to achieving development outcomes and relevant to all aspects of ADB's operations. After all, how can the region expect to achieve its economic and social potential if it is not making best use of half of its population? It is also important that ADB is able to model this behaviour in our own operations. We need to make sure we are drawing on the widest possible pool of talent to deliver our mission. This means rigorously testing our systems and processes for barriers to greater gender diversity in our staff, and indeed our board of directors.
To advance gender equality, ADB should keep making the case to all of our member countries that gender equality is more than a case of equity or human rights or just general decency. It also makes very good economic sense. Advancing gender equality helps everyone, whether they be male or female, government or business. That means that helping girls attend and finish school, and supporting female-led and run micro, small, and medium enterprises, and ensuring that women have equal access to community resources and can play a meaningful role in decision-making. All of these things help the entire society, men as well as women, advance economically. ADB should also seek to be the change it wants to see in the world. And by this, I mean that ADB should continue to do everything it can to ensure gender equality within the bank, whether that be in hiring practices, ensuring that women have access to training and career opportunities, evaluating benefits programs to root out any gender biases, or identifying female candidates for executive development. The more credible ADB is as a gender equality agent, the more effectively it will advance the case of gender equality across the region.
Thank you for joining us, listening, and for your active participation. We hope we were able to inspire you on taking action on gender equality in Asia and the Pacific region. And together, we have the power to transform the lives of women and girls in this region. As the old saying goes, women hold up half the sky. My name is Jamela Alendogan, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to host and moderate. Mabuhay, maraming salamat. Goodbye for now.